an orderly wind-down of that bank.
Well, in relation to statements that were made on the first matter raised by the Deputy, clearly what has emerged since then in terms of the governance issues that relate to the bank, and obviously the subsequent establishment of NAMA and the subsequent writing down of assets to the tune of 55%, has meant that the capital requirements for that bank have greatly increased. Secondly, in relation to the €2 billion, we would also make the point that the guarantee in itself, the guarantee had provided us with the stability, the ability to fund the banking system, and indeed banks have been paying for that guarantee, which was set out for a 2-year period. The issue in relation to the €2 billion injection on the 31st of May is part of that additional capital required to ensure that the bank continues to meet its regulatory capital requirements in the context of the losses the bank experiences from the transfer of its loans into NAMA. As indicated in the Minister for Finance's statement to the Dáil at the end of March, further capital estimated to amount to up to €10 billion will be needed for Anglo to fully secure its capital position based on the information that's available to us at this point. The €2 billion capital injection is in line with what was expected might arise from the transfer of the first tranche of Anglo's loans into NAMA, and was approved by the European Commission on that basis at the end of March last. Without this capital injection, Anglo would not meet its regulatory capital requirements and would have to be immediately wound down. That would mean a fire sale of assets and capital losses of at least €40 billion to the state. In addition, in liquidation, the state would have to provide in the order of €70 billion of cash up front to meet the deposits, bondholders and the liabilities due to the euro system. Of course, a portion of this could eventually be mitigated by asset sales. The availability of the contingency provision was made clear in the Commission's press statement at the end of March, providing state aid approval for the provision of additional capital support for Anglo. The €2 billion contingency provision provided alongside the €8.3 billion capital support for Anglo at the end of March is being activated following the NAMA transfers earlier this month. The discount on the loans transferred from Anglo into NAMA was 55%, which was in excess of the 38% discount that the bank was applying to these loans on its books at the end of March. The total amount of capital provided to Anglo to date is €14.3 billion. €4 billion in capital was provided to Anglo in 2009, €8.3 billion in March 2010 by way of a promissory note, and €2 billion further capital is now being provided to Anglo by way of an addition to the promissory note. This is taking place by way of an adjustment to the existing promissory note, which issued to the bank on the 31st of March 2010. It brings the total value of the promissory note to €10.3 billion. It's expected that additional capital will be provided to the bank in the course of the year by increasing the value of the promissory note. The current estimate is that the overall capital requirement could be of the order of a further €8 billion, that is the €10 billion estimate less the €2 billion provided on the 31st of May. It's not possible at this stage to quantify precisely the exact scale of the capital requirement for the bank, which will depend on such factors as the final discount on the assets transferred to NAMA, which depends on the loan-by-loan valuation process carried out by NAMA, the scale of the losses arising on the remainder of Anglo's loan book, and any capital costs arising under a restructuring of the bank. EU state aid approval will of course be required as appropriate for any amount above that approved by the European Commission thus far. Regarding the question about the restructuring plan, this was submitted to the EU Commission on the 31st of May. A detailed evaluation of Anglo's restructuring plan will commence immediately and will involve extensive consultation and dialogue between the Commission, the Irish authorities and the bank. The restructuring analyses a number of options, including winding up the institution over different time periods. In each case, these are very expensive options, giving rise to major capital and funding costs to the taxpayer, in line with the estimates set out by the Minister in his statement on banking on the 30th of March last. The bank has proposed splitting the bank into two elements: an asset management company to run down some of its loan book, and a bank which will continue to operate as a viable going concern and would eventually be sold back into the market to recoup some value for the state. While work remains to be done on the precise details of the restructuring plan and its implementation,
We can't proceed. We can't proceed on the basis that whoever is in possession, if there's meetings going on around the place, it's simply unacceptable. Could we have a Taoiseach without interruption, please?
While, for the purpose of putting the facts on the record, while work remains to be done on the precise details of the restructuring plan and its implementation, it is seen to provide a superior outcome for the state and the taxpayer, and in particular avoid significant additional losses and funding costs that would arise for the state under other scenarios.
Deputy Imogen.
It's extraordinary, Corla, that it seems we have two different types of language now when we talk about public money, taxpayers' money. When we talk about money that's needed for schools and special needs assistance and, pensioners and people who are on social welfare, employees of the state with regard to their income, the country is broke and there's no money for them. When we come to talk about the money that is going into Anglo-Irish Bank, we talk about billions as if it were monopoly money and that it doesn't matter. Taoiseach, to cut to the answers to the questions that I'm asking, are you now saying to us that on the day that you came in and the Minister for Finance came into the House here and asked the House to guarantee this bank, that bank was bust? Yeah. Secondly, what are you saying about the bottom line? You've said to us that with 14,300 million already gone into it, there might be another 8,000 million that might have to go into it. And are you saying it might even be more than that? Because there was an uncertainty around what you were saying. And thirdly, what exactly are you saying about the future of this bank now? I did hear you say that one of the options that is now being considered is a winding up of the bank over different timescales and different time scenarios. The Minister for Finance, when he came into the House here, when he was talking to us here on the 30th of March, said, and I quote from him, he said, "The winding up the bank is not and was never a viable option." Is it now a viable option, albeit in a timescale that has to be determined with the Commission and discussed with the bank? I think that people of the country whose taxes and whose money is now being used to be poured into this bank and who are likely to be saddled with the cost of that for years to come, I think need to hear with some degree of certainty what exactly is happening with this bank. And while you're at it, can you explain to us how the government ended up appointing 3 more insiders as non-executive directors of this bank? One of them a former finance director of AIB, another a former Fianna Fáil senator. And in case you think that I'm making that as a political charge, I'm using the term insider, which was used in one of the national newspapers commenting on it this week, which described it as your government's obsession with insiders and your government not having learned anything from the way in which corporate governance of the banks has been handled in years past.